Welcome to Secrets of the Stars, where we explore the ancient knowledge of astrology, decode your unique blueprint, and unveil how the wisdom of the sky contributes to your life. I'm your host, Abby Lutus, astrologer, mentor, and sky guide. It's time to embark on a cosmic adventure of self-discovery and understanding why you are the way you are. Let's dive in. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Secrets of the Stars. I'm excited to be in here again with another episode for you. And today I'm going to be talking all about the ascendant, also known as the rising sign. There is a little difference, but I will go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. As you know, I have finally landed here in Perth. I made the long trek across the Nullarbor, and I'm just starting to land and ground and starting to explore the local area. So yesterday I went out to a beautiful waterfall out at Bells Rapids, and it was so nice to connect in with nature. Perth is a city and I'm not really used to living in the city, so getting into nature is really grounding, and especially being by water and waterfalls, I really love that energy. So that is great. I've also signed up for a new gym, and so I'm excited to be re-kicking off a fitness journey. And yeah, I just love being in the gym. I think it might have to do with my Capricorn ascendant, but it's something that's always been a staple of my training, and I absolutely love it. I have also begun on a new fasting protocol, and if you know me well, you'll know that I have been using fasting for the last 10 or so, or even more years. And this is a slightly different approach that aligns with the hormonal cycle of a woman. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out. I'm in about 7 days and I'm really loving it so far. So that is the update. That is where I am at. And before we dive into today's topic, I want to let you in on something really exciting. If you are ready to explore the depths of who you truly are through the lens of astrology, I've created a free resource just for you. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Your Big Three, and in it, you'll discover the secrets of your sun, moon, and rising signs and how they shape you emotionally, personally, and how you show up in the world. You know, I think this is such a great resource because so many people ask me about astrology and really only know about their sun sign or their star sign. So this is a great guide to download and explore more, learn a little bit more about your astrology. So head on over to the link in my show notes and grab your copy and start this journey of self-discovery with me today. All right, let's jump into the episode where I'm going to be talking all about the ascendant, which is how we rise and what others see in us. If I was going to give it a tagline, that's what I would say. So what is it? What is this ascendant? The ascendant in astrology, it's the point of the ecliptic or the degree of the zodiac that rises above the eastern horizon at any moment. All right. So this point is connected to the Earth's rotation and it moves roughly 1 degree every 4 minutes. So it's changing pretty often. But this movement, it's essentially connected to Earth, and it means that it moves through all 360 degrees of the zodiac in approximately 24 hours, okay? And so, this is why the rising sign changes approximately every 2 to 3 hours into a new zodiac sign. I'm going to talk about the differences between the ascendant and the rising just in the terminology in a minute, but you might know that those words are sort of used interchangeably, and I'll explain why. So the The rapid movement of this ascendant degree, like one degree every 4 minutes, is why an accurate birth time is essential to have a precise astrology reading. Because if you're determining someone's ascendant sign and degree, you want to know that exact time, because, if it was 30 minutes later, it could be a different degree point. And especially if it was, you 4 or 5 or 12 hours difference, it's going to be a completely different rising sign. So I wanted to look at the definition of ascendant. Like, what does it actually mean? And if we look in the dictionary, it means rising in power or influence. And I thought that was just so beautiful. Another definition was a state or position of dominant power or importance. And I really like how this relates into astrology. The word ascendant stems from Latin, and it literally means climbing up. All right. And as astrology is a symbolic language, I love looking at these words and seeing how these meanings and definitions play in with what the meaning of this ascendant point is, all right? So the ascendant point is also known as the AC. You might also see it written as AS, and in ancient astrology, the point was also known as horoscopos, which is where the term horoscopes come from, all right? Because horoscopos is essentially the hour marker of time. So in natal astrology, this is the exact point of the eastern horizon at the moment that you were born, all right? So from all that explanation, this is what it means. And it's marked by the birth time. So your birth time is, if you think about it, when you were born, if you were born, say, in the middle of the day, the sun was in the highest point of the sky, you need to look to the eastern horizon to see what was rising, and that would have been your ascendant point or the rising sign. So, the AC or the ascendant is a significant point. There are others, and it's not an actual solid planet or object that's out in space. It's just a point, okay? And the ascendant point plays a significant role in setting up the houses in your natal chart. It's very closely connected to the first house, but I'm not going to speak on the first house in this episode. I'm going to go into that on a later episode. But the way that you set up a chart really depends on what house system you use, but the ascendant always falls in the first house. All right, so you've probably also heard this term rising sign. And what is the difference between rising and ascendant? Essentially, the ascendant point is the actual degree point. So in my chart, my birth time was 2:45 p.m., which makes my ascendant point 7 degrees Capricorn. Had I been born at a different time, even if it was around that time, say 3 p.m., that ascendant point, the degree point, would have been different. However, the rising sign, because the point would have still been in Capricorn, would still have been the same. So when we talk about rising sign, we're talking about the entire sign of the zodiac. So we're talking about Capricorn as a whole. When we're talking about the ascendant, we're looking at a specific degree point. And this becomes important when you begin to read charts, because there are certain planets that might cross over this point in transits, or there are other planets that might aspect it in your natal chart. So it really becomes more important when we start looking more in depth at the natal chart. If we're just looking at our rising sign, we can definitely pull on the characteristics of that zodiac sign to gain a better understanding. So the ascendant point or the rising sign, we'll talk about them interchangingly, but the rising sign in our chart represents the energies that you rise with, how you show up in the world, how other people see you, and I like to say the gifts that you rise with. And these might be so innate, these gifts that we have, these things that we rise with. They might be so familiar to us that we just don't recognize them. So the ascendant point always falls in the first house, and it really sets up the rest of your natal chart or your astrological chart. It represents new beginnings, and it is a very strong point in natal astrology, and it's part of the big three energies. And because of this significance is at the way we rise, because it is connected to our birth time, this is why it's included in one of those big three energies. And when you start to explore your rising sign characteristics, you'll start to understand why. The rising sign represents how you show up. It's your outward persona. It's the face you present to the world, or the energy that makes you unique. Imagine your rising sign as the first impression you make on others, the energy that you exude, or the way you interact with your environment. It shapes your style, your approach to life, and how you perceive the world. So the ascendant point also helps us better understand our body physically, our physicality, our style, our identity, and our health. And it is very significant if we were looking at the body. Now, I've done a little bit of medical astrology. I've studied a little bit, and the ascendant holds significant importance in medical astrology, and perhaps even more than the sun and the moon. It really depends on what you're looking at, but we can look to this point to really understand our body structure and even the way we look. And it also can represent how the strength of our immunity, and it really plays a significant part in medical astrology. Often the ascendant point or the rising sign is so much more important than many of the other planets. Now, the ascendant point and the rising sign are always in the first house. I think I mentioned this already. And this is the strongest place in your chart. It is... I definitely have recognized this, especially when I notice any planets moving through this space. They have a significant impact, and most likely in a positive way. Of course, it depends on the planet and how you are using and engaging with the energy. But I always find that when planets move through the first house, or move through my first house, I just feel so energized, especially because these planets have normally been moving through the 12th house prior to that, and now they're coming into the 12th house. Is about, things that are hidden. It's kind of a time where we might be hiding away, or we might be slowing down, or it's a time where you can even get sick, and I've definitely experienced that. So when you have that shift and planets come into the first house or into your rising sign, it's really an uplifting of energy. I have definitely felt progress and have wonderful things happen. I really love when Capricorn season comes along, even though my sun sign is a Leo, which I also feel very strong and happy and enjoying Leo season. But Capricorn season just has this renewal of energy for me. So I really love that. Now, a lot of people may not relate to their rising sign when they first learn it. And remember that this sign is also how we are seen by other people. So this could be one of the reasons why you might not relate to your rising sign straight away. I often think too that, we have an affinity sometimes with our sun sign, and a lot of people deeply relate. I know I certainly did. I connected so much with the Leo archetype and the personality that when I learned of my rising sign, I was like, oh, I don't know if it's as strong as my sun sign. But over time, as I started to understand it, I really realized and recognized, and if I was being honest with myself, knew that rising sign also was playing a really significant role. So I think with time, and when you study and understand the astrological signs more deeply, you gain a better understanding of how you align with this sign, and especially with this point, and how, other people, because I really think it's, such a superpower to know how you are showing up in the world, because it can be quite different to who you might think you are as or who your spirit is, essentially. So the other reason that you may not especially relate to your rising sign or your ascendant is if you have moved location or if you're living in a different place. So there's part of an astrology called where you can relocate a chart. So if you are no longer living in the same place that you were born, you can relocate the chart by putting in the new place where you are currently living. Now, I must say that this doesn't have priority over the natal chart. The natal chart always is the strongest energy, but this can give you some insights as to what's rising sign you might be if you have moved locations. I have always gone back and changed my relocated my chart to places where I had moved to and lived for a while, and I definitely can relate. I am a Capricorn rising, and I'll tell you a story in a minute, but a lot of the places that I am living in now have me as a Sagittarius rising, which I can really relate to also, which is quite funny because, these signs are so opposite. You can also look at your solar return rising sign. So the solar return is essentially when the sun comes back to the exact place in your chart. This is known as the solar return, also your birthday. I did an episode back on episode 40. You can go and listen to that, all about your solar return. But when you cast your solar return chart for the year, you will notice that you will likely have a different rising sign, and that might give you some indications as how you're showing up in that year. So when I first started studying astrology, I had an incorrect birth time. I was always told that I was born at 20 past 1. But when I started diving deeper into astrology, one of my sister-in-laws, she got me a star chart. So she got me this beautiful image of the sky when I was born. And I remember I got it for Christmas. And the first thing I was doing, I looked straight down at my birth date and birth time, and I noticed that it didn't say 1:20, it said 2:45. And she had gone to my mom and asked for my birth time. And knowing that this was going to be a gift, my mom thought, well, I better just check it, and went to my baby book where she found the time of 2:45, the precise time that my dad had written down. Now, my dad, I think he has a Virgo moon, but I definitely know he's very precise with things like this. And so that would not have been incorrect. And my mum says that as well. So then I had this identity crisis of learning that I was not, in fact, a Sagittarius rising. I was a Capricorn rising. The more I study, the more I learn, the more I understand, the more I definitely relate to this energy. So that is definitely an interesting one for you to explore. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode all about the ascendant and the rising. I use those terms interchangeably, but I hope that you now can understand what the difference between the actual ascendant point is and the rising sign. I hope you found it insightful or at least learned something. If you have and enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you think might love it. I would really love to get this episode or this podcast out in the world. And remember to head on over and grab my free astrology guide, The Ultimate Guide to Your Big Three. You can find the link in the show notes. If you're interested in booking a reading, please head to my website, abbylutis.com. And until next time, keep shining bright. Thank you for joining me on this cosmic journey of self-discovery. If you have enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with someone who you think would love it. Keep exploring the secrets of the stars, and remember, the universe has woven a unique story just for you. Until next time, keep shining bright.